Welcome to Knife Thoughts. This video is going to be my review of this knife, and this is the Jack Wolf Knives Mini Cyborg Jack in Kieranite Cosmic Pink. And so this video is going to be a little different than my normal full reviews of Jack Wolf Knives models, and that's because I didn't do an unboxing video on this knife. And truth be told, the reason for that is that I got this while I was at work, didn't get home until late 9:30 or 9:45, maybe 10, something like that. So I didn't have time to do an unboxing video then, and I just really wanted to open it. I just couldn't wait. So I decided to just open it up and do a full review. So because of that, I do want to show you the packaging, because if you are familiar with Jack Wolf Knives, you know that Ben, Donnie, everyone there at Jack Wolf Knives does a great job of the packaging. It's really part of not just the product that you're getting, but the experience. So when you get this knife, it's going to come in a box like this. So a nice matte box with some embossing, silver on the logo there, which I love the logo, silver up here, and then Jack Wolf Knives on the sides, and a write up on the back, which I highly recommend you take the time to read, stop the video and read it. If you have not read this, it gives you kind of some of the background on Ben starting Jack Wolf Knives. So then when you open up that box, you'll get a tube. And so if you are familiar with traditional knives, you are probably aware of Great Eastern Cutlery, and Great Eastern Cutlery is known for using tubes. Now they use cardboard tubes. So I'll show you one right here. This is what Great Eastern Cutlery knives come in. And since then, Ben here at Jack Wolf Knives, and now also Cooper Cutlery, have started using tubes. Now this tube honestly is a nicer tube than what you get from GEC. It is metal, as you can see. And a fun little kind of tidbit on this is that you can see it says can made in England. And it's actually the same company that makes the tins for Renaissance wax. So if you've used Renaissance wax, it's something that can be good for a knife like a Jack Wolf Knives model. Just keeps it nice and shimmery, keeps it from rusting and such like that, even though this S90V is not rust prone. And it's interesting that these are the same manufacturer. The other thing is that this has a screw top. I do like that. It's easy to take it on and off. But then you get this really cool art on the side. So you can see the art on this one is by Sean Tiffany. And so there's two artists that do art for Jack Wolf Knives. And I believe, if I'm understanding what Ben told me correctly, that the re-releases will be done by the newer of the artists. I believe it's Gonzo. They go by Gonzo. And then the new patterns are done by Sean Tiffany. So this is technically a new pattern because it's the Mini Cyborg. And you get this really cool art where this is Jack Wolf himself in full Terminator mode there. All the skin's been torn off. The Cyborg had art where it was like half and half, like the cover or the poster for one of the Terminator movies, Terminator 2 maybe. But anyway, full Terminator mode, and then you've got Little Bro riding on his back there in his RoboCop uniform. So, definitely throwbacks as always to the 80s and 90s. Ben does that a lot. Now, I was born in 1994, so I didn't get all of the 90s, but I definitely was aware of a lot of the references, particularly because I have brothers who are much older than me. So they, were watching all this stuff and with me around when I probably shouldn't have been watching it. I remember I saw Predator way before I should have. But anyway, I appreciate all the references, even if some of them are a little bit before my time. But speaking of which, you also get a POG. So that's another thing that, POGs were not popular when I was, the age that you would use Pogs, but my brothers had Pogs, so I do remember them, and I would play with them myself, like literally by myself. So I do appreciate that. And, you know, I'm 5 minutes in here. I'm sure people will complain, you know, that I haven't shown the knife much yet, but like I say, I'm doing it this way because I didn't do an unboxing, and I think that this is really part of what you're getting. And speaking of which, the next thing is you get 2 stickers. I already put one of the stickers up, so you can see Stay Out of Trouble, which is also from RoboCop there. And then you get a leather slip. These are really nice. They have converted me to using slips for my slip joints in general. I think it's a really nice addition because this is a high quality, high-end knife. It's nice to have a slip to carry it in. So I do really appreciate that. And then finally, again, like GEC and really a lot of other traditional knives, the knife comes wrapped in something. Now, a lot of carbon steel traditional knives come wrapped in a wax paper to try to stave off the moisture. This is a microfiber cloth, so you can use it to clean the knife off. This is very pink, which goes along with the version that I got. And these are nice, you know, it makes a nice cloth. Also, you can use it as a handkerchief. I have a good number of these now, and it's definitely, you know, something you could carry as a handkerchief, which they do also make Jack Wolf knives handkerchiefs with the art for some of the models on the handkerchief, which is a cool thing. I have one of them. I'm probably gonna get more of them too, but I just haven't yet. And so finally, 6 and almost a half minutes in, here is the Mini Cyborg Jack. So this is a really interesting knife because a lot of times when I do these full reviews, I talk about the history of the pattern. And the truth is that this is really Ben's own pattern. It's not directly inspired by any particular traditional vintage pattern that I'm aware of. He kind of said, you know, such in one of his videos on this knife. So it's kind of unique in that because really all of the other Jack Wolf knives models are pretty clearly, you know, an homage or homage, however you say it, to a traditional pattern. This is not so much. Now, that said, I want to show you some knives that it, to me, does remind me of. So first of all, I think the closest pattern that it reminds me of is a sow belly. So this is the Javelina Jack. And you can see not only do they have a pretty similar clip point, it's not the same, the belly is more abrupt on the Mini Cyborg, but a similar clip point. They have a similar shape to the handle. They've got this curve, this almost S curve. And so that's something that really makes me think that this Cyborg Jack is kind of like a very futuristic version of a sow belly. But that said, the shape of the handle also reminds me of a gun stock. And now, not necessarily the traditional gun stock pattern. So this is a sharpshooter jack, and it has kind of the traditional gun stock pattern shape where it's this kind of downturn here towards the wider angle. This actually does remind me of a gun stock, but a little bit more of like a flintlock, where it has that really hard downward turn to the handle, or even some really early Middle Eastern guns, smoothbore guns. So it's kind of an interesting thing. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but it's something that I just do see, that kind of that very, very old traditional flintlock style, or, you know, wheel lock style gun stock shape to it. Now, this knife is a mini version of the original Cyborg. So I'll show you the size comparison between this and the original here. So this is the original, or the full-sized Cyborg Jack. And you can see it's definitely bigger. Now, this camera is at somewhat of an angle, so let's see if this gives you a better idea. Now, it doesn't look that much bigger, but in the hand, it definitely feels like a more significant knife. This feels like a really full-size slip joint, like a lot of Jack Wolf knives do. They're on kind of the medium to large end, and this feels like a medium to smaller end knife. But it's the same design, really, just scaled down. So if you're familiar with the Cyborg Jack, Think of this like kind of like a GEC number 86 versus a GEC number 15, I would say. Not the 14, it's not quite that small, but GEC number 86, GEC number 15, in just that size comparison or size difference between the two. Now, as you can see here, well, first I want to give you some size comparisons to some of the other smaller Jack Wolf knives. So one here is the laid back Jack. Not necessarily a small or a mini, but similar in size. So if you are, comfortable with the laid back Jack, the mini Cyborg is similar in size. The laid back Jack feels a little bit more, wide in the hand because the handle is a little bit less, slender, but it's similar. And then another is the Little Bro. So the Little Bro is the smaller companion to the Big Bro, as the name suggests. And you can see that they're similar in size. If you're familiar with the Little Bro, the mini Cyborg will probably be really familiar to you. Speaking of these two, I'll talk about this more in a little bit, but I really like these synthetic handles that they're using. These are really the only two that I have in this type of handle, and I really like it. It's another thing that I necessarily wouldn't have thought that I would be a huge fan of until I saw these particular ones and thought, wow, those look great. I need to try those out. So I am a real big fan of that. But let's move on to talking about this version that I have of the mini Cyborg Jack. So this, like I said, is this pink kyanite, cosmic pink kyanite. And kyanite is actually a handle material that you see used on case knives, and in general you see it in the industry, but it's not something that I am super familiar with. So that Camp Crystal Lake, the other blue color there that I had, really the only other of this type of handle that I have, and to be completely honest, I'm forgetting right now if that even is technically kyanite. But it's a really interesting looking material. You can see it has a lot of depth to it. It has a lot of chatoyance, that kind of shimmeriness to it, and just lots of really cool, unique character with, again, the depth, the swirls, the shimmering. I really think it's beautiful, and this knife got high praise from my wife. Typically, my wife has seen a lot of knives. She certainly appreciates their use and supports me in my crazy love of knives, but she doesn't get excited about them typically. This one she saw and she said that one's actually pretty. It's probably the prettiest one that she'd seen in a while. So, I think that's pretty high praise. And it is very pretty. And I actually really like how this black complements the pink. It really contrasts with the pink. So this is coated. All of the hardware, all of the metal, except for the edge, basically, is coated. And it is a very sturdy coating. I have used this and the re-release of the Vampire Jack quite a bit, and really have been impressed with how durable this coating is. It's something where at first, when I saw that they were doing knives with a black coating, I wasn't real sure about it. I wasn't sure if it was something that I would like, but I have really been impressed with the durability of it. I'm not saying I went out and batoned with this knife or, cut 1,000 yards of cardboard or anything, but I used it and had no trouble with it getting, worn. I don't see anywhere on the blade. And even I carried this mostly in a slip, but I did carry it some without the slip, and I don't see any, really scratches from that either. Now, speaking of that, this is a smaller Jack Wolf knife, but it does fit in their typical slips, as well as these fancy shell Cordovan slips. I got this one here recently, and this is what I carried this knife in. It's really what I carry all of my Jack Wolf knives in because they generally all fit in the same size slips, but they do have a slip in this shell Cordovan coming out. Really, it seems like specifically to go with this knife. It has pink leather and black thread, man, it looks great. I think I'm probably gonna have to get one. That's a nice feature that it fits in their normal slip, so you can use the same slip for all of your Jack Wolf knives if you want to. I think most people don't do that, but that's really what I do. But it was very durable, and as all Jack Wolf knives, it's just made superbly. I mean, if you've been following along with these knives, you know that they are very, very well made, and that's the truth here. No gaps, really, really nice all the way across here. Great construction. You can see that the interface between the cover and the bolsters is really nice. You can catch your thumb just a little on this liner, but it's not a gap, it's just that it's just a little teensy bit high. I mean, less than a millimeter, you can just catch it, but very flush at full open and half and closed. Now the coating, you can see the line there, but it feels flush. Like you can really only barely feel your fingernail going across that. So great construction, perfect centering, beautiful action. I would call this one like a 6.5, something like that. It's not super strong. It's not the strongest Jack Wolf knives pull that I have had, certainly, and some of them have been getting pretty strong recently. So I like where this is at on the action scale, but no blade play, no blade wrap. You know, the S90 V Steel, really great. I haven't had to fully sharpen this. I did touch it up. I didn't re-apex it, but I did touch it up, and it sharpened well. It's a little thicker. The edge is a little thicker from the belly to the tip. These are hand sharpened, so you'll get that every now and then, but it's still nice and sharp. And it's really just a beautifully made knife. Now, as for the size of this knife, I was a little concerned. I didn't know if it would fit my hand well, be a little smaller than I prefer. That said, I do carry even smaller traditional knives than this, but just with the shape of the handle, I wasn't sure. And I found that it does feel good in the hand. There's kind of two ways that I ended up gripping it. The first is like so, where I have my pinky and then my ring finger on this area, the middle finger right in that kind of crook there, that angle, and then the index up here, and you can kind of choke up and get a pretty high grip. And it feels comfortable in the hand, really no hot spots. Use it like this a little bit, but mostly I would use it with my ring finger and my middle finger on this lower flat area, and my index finger up here like this. That way you can kind of choke back so that you get that edge a little farther out. It's comfortable. See how my pinky hits on this bevel, so it's not going into any corner, and just works really nicely like this. So I had no trouble with that. And of course, you mostly use a knife in a pinch grip, and it feels perfectly fine like that. The clip point, classic clip point, you can't go wrong with a clip point. It's going to work well. I use this knife a lot for cutting tomatoes and stuff up for my son, and of course it did perfectly fine with that. So I have really enjoyed this mini Cyborg Jack. It is a cool entry into the Jack Wolf Knives list of models because it's the first mini. Now, I say that there was the big bro and the little bro. Those are kind of big and little. This is a mini version. Now, is that really its own thing as compared to the big bro and little bro? I don't know, but I do think it's interesting, and it opens up kind of a big door for Jack Wolf Knives, in my opinion, where they could do mini versions of things. Mini version of the Midnight Jack would be really cool. I'd love to see a mini Barlow from Jack Wolf Knives. I'd also love to just see a non-coffin handled Barlow. As many Barlows as Ben wants to make, I think it will be great. But, a mini version of the, what's it called? The low drag Jack, the teardrop, would be great. And then I think big versions, large, extra large, whatever you want to call it, versions would be cool too. The Javelina, that'd be a gnarly knife in an enlarged version. But I think it's a great thing for them to do, open up those doors, and I really appreciate getting to check out this knife. I hope that you have enjoyed the video. If you have, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, click the bell, and select all so you know when I post new videos. Check out my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this and knife-related topics. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.